What is going on, guys? Jason Burke here, Styles Clash for Life, coming at you on YouTube, and today I've got some football focus. I've got a ton of more Steeler coverage coming. There's a ton of coverage on this channel already. If you guys want to see my previous videos on how the Steelers should fix their quarterback situation, how to fix our offensive line, who was on my free agency want list, what I think of the free agents we already got in free agency, you guys can check all those videos out. They're all doing pretty well. I appreciate all the feedback, all the views. The Steelers stuff has done my best stuff so far on my channel this year. Also, if you guys care about horror movies at all, for you horror movie fans, my newest trailer for A Soul's Window, my psychological horror film, is up on the channel now as well. But today, I want to talk to you guys about, I'm going to do a several-part video here as the NFL draft comes up at the end of this month. The draft is about 3.5 weeks away. And I wanted to talk to you guys about the Steelers' kind of draft needs, what they should draft. I'm not going to get into specifics here. I'm going to do my own mock draft closer to the actual draft itself. I'm going to break down pick by pick the guys that I want, the priorities that I want, name by name later on. But for this first of two-part videos, I'm going to break down each side of the ball. And I want to talk about kind of where the priorities lie in the draft. Based on our current roster right now and what we have and the moves we've already made, kind of how that affects the chain down the line of what we should do in the draft. Now, I'm going to start off with offense today. Part 1 is offense. I will do part 2, defense, next week. But I wanted to talk about offense just extemporaneously off the top of my head. There's no notes here. There's nothing written. I just wanted to talk to you guys off the top of the dome about what I think we should do in the draft. So if we're doing offense, obviously we're going to start at the most divisive, controversial place, and that is the biggest playmaker, the quarterback position. I've seen a lot of mocks having us taking Kenny Pickett. I've seen a couple with Matt Corral. I've seen most of all with Malik Willis. That's the thing. I understand that Tomlin went out with these guys. He had Willis go to his pro day. He did drills with Willis or whatever. I know he's talked about what an athlete Malik Willis is. I don't think quarterback is a high priority in this particular draft. Now, obviously, quarterback was one of our biggest holes after the season with Ben leaving, and I talked about what I would have done in free agency. I would have gone after Jameis Winston. We did not choose Jameis. He's back with the Saints now, but we did choose Mitch Trubisky. Now, based on our moves so far, Pittsburgh has obviously been high on Mason Rudolph. I'm not. I don't see the future in Rudolph like some of the GMs and execs do in Pittsburgh. Some fans love him, some fans don't. It's popular opinion back and forth with him either way. I'm not a Mason fan, but he did get extended for this season. Also, to have the former Redskins quarterback on the roster as well, Dwayne Haskins, Commodores now, Dwayne Haskins on the roster, we signed him to I think it was a cheap 2-year deal last year and kind of re-extended him for this season. So we have a guy we signed for a very cheap deal last year. Never really played him in the regular season. I think he played pretty well in preseason, but he never got a chance to play any meaningful minutes. He was number 3 on the depth chart. And Mason Rudolph is a guy that the team themselves, the Steelers brass, has felt very highly on. So, with those two guys already in-house, and you sign Mitch Trubisky to a 2-year, favorable but still, decent amount of money deal. We didn't overpay. We paid under what he was expected to get, but we still paid, for a free agent quarterback in Trubisky, who is not our favorite quarterback. He's definitely a kind of a game manager, but he played pretty well for several seasons, had a winning record over 3 years in Chicago, started consistently, and made a Pro Bowl as an alternate in his best year. So, with these 3 guys on the roster, if you're signing a quarterback in the draft, that makes no sense to me. If you're looking at draft position, if you're taking one at 20, you're adding a 4th quarterback to the roster. We already made it a point to bring back Haskins for another year. Made it a point to extend Rudolph another year. Made it a point to sign Trubisky. If you already have 3 quarterbacks on your roster, Pittsburgh never keeps 4. They sometimes go 2. They always go usually 3. They're never going to go 4. So you're going to have to cut somebody. So why make it a point to bring back the 2 backups we've had and sign another one if you're going to draft a 4th one? And if you're not sure about Haskins, Rudolph, and Trubisky, if there's no standout starters to you there, this draft ain't going to be it for quarterbacks. This is one of the weakest quarterback drafts in a while, and it's been, several in a row now. But this is a weak quarterback for drafts. This is not the draft you want to draft a quarterback early in. Next season is a stacked quarterback draft. We signed Trubisky to a 2-year deal. He can be a bridge starter this year, and then we can, put us in position to draft one next year with our draft capital. So it makes no sense to me to bring another unsure quarterback in here. If we draft a Desmond Ridder, he has a lot of question marks. If we draft Kenny Pickett, he has a lot of question marks physically. If we draft Malik Willis, he's an amazing athlete, but he has, he's not played a level of competition, and he's not seasoned as a passer. It's bringing in another Lamar Jackson, and you might say, yeah, they win with him. So Malik Willis is definitely an athlete, but he's got a lot of questions, perhaps more questions than Trubisky. People don't like Trubisky, but he has started consistently and won consistently in the NFL. So, Trubisky is more proven at this point than a Malik Willis. And even though I don't like Mason Rudolph and I don't think he's the answer, he's started more games at least in starting half a season than a Malik Willis, who comes from a small school and has questions about his accuracy and his arm and his decision making. So, yeah, he's a good athlete, but he's not the guy for us. And drafting a quarterback later, I've seen Pittsburgh drafting on a few mock drafts in the 6th, 7th round. That makes even less sense because now you're getting a project guy who's probably not going to start, and you're just drafting someone to be cut in preseason. So Pittsburgh, in my opinion, should have a very low grade on drafting a quarterback this year. I would say D-. I wouldn't draft anybody. I don't think my favorite quarterback in this draft is Matt Corral, but he's got a lot of questions with size and with the injury he suffered in the bowl game, which is a big injury. So he's my favorite in this draft, and he's got questions. I would not draft a quarterback in this draft. Running back, very low priority as well. We've obviously got our guy in Najee Harris. He's our every down bell cow. He's our main guy. We do want to have somebody with more experience that we can trust backing him up. I don't think Benny Snell is it. I don't think Kalen Ballage is going to return. So we do want to have a second guy behind Najee to spell him once in a while. That's better suited as a veteran running back because our running backs are young and Najee's very young. I think you want a minimum veteran in free agency or something like that to be the backup. If you're going to draft one, I don't see a problem drafting a 5th or 6th round guy to kind of see if they can be kind of a swing back, scat back, Jalen Samuels, pass catcher, whatever. But if you're going to draft one in the low rounds. Don't waste an early pick on this because they're not going to play significantly enough unless Najee gets hurt, knock on wood. But they're not going to play enough to make it worth an early draft pick. So that's a low priority. Fullback, we've already got Watt. No reason to draft another fullback. Wide receiver. This is by far our biggest priority on offense, and it's our top 2 priorities overall. If you guys want to see what my other top priority is on defense, you probably already know what it is, but I will talk to you guys about that. But wide receiver is a big, big priority. We only have 3 guys currently under contract that we can trust to play actual minutes. That is Deontay Johnson, Chase Claypool, and Anthony Miller. Those of you guys that are confused about Anthony Miller, he was the Chicago Bears player for 3 years. They played with Mitch Trubisky. He was kind of their slot guy. He's small, but he's got decent hands. He's a bit of a combat catcher, and he's got quick feet. I like Anthony Miller as the number 3 here. He was signed to the practice squad last year, only played in 1 game. I think he had 1 catch last season. But he is, again, a 3-year player that started in the slot and sometimes at the number 2 when there were injuries for Chicago as they won games under Trubisky. So he knows the quarterback and he knows the system that Trubisky ran, and that's a good possibility for us being number 3. The only other guy on the roster, well, we have Cody White, who's a practice squad guy who plays in preseason. He's not bad, but he's not going to play this year. Gunnar Olszewski, we signed. He's a good return guy. He's going to make up for McLeod's returning, but he's not going to be a receiver. He's not a receiving guy. And all 3 of the guys I just listed have a lot of question marks. Deontay Johnson has elite route running and speed potential. He can be a top 10 receiver in the league, but he drops like crazy. Dropped big time in 2020. Dropped big time in the second half of 2021. Chase Claypool, very good down the sideline jump ball guy, good combat catcher on streaks, but he can't run routes whatsoever. He's not expanded his game whatsoever. And he's got disciplinary issues, talking about, celebrating in the 4th quarter when we're down and talking about playing music in the locker room and stuff like that. So, and then Anthony Miller, he had success in Chicago for 3 years, but the last 2 years, he was cut and was on our practice squad. So he has not had significant time in 2 years, and who knows if he still has that speed or anything like that. So we have three guys that I trust right now, but they all come with big question marks. You need, in my opinion, at least two more wide receivers on this roster. I would prefer it if we drafted one and then signed a free agent. I would take one kind of aging veteran guy if we could get one, looking at like an Emmanuel Sanders, an AJ Green, a Julio Jones. Look for an established and accomplished older veteran who's got a few years left who may want to come and win as one of our receivers and then draft high another one. I would be looking at a first round priority here. I'm not going to talk about who I would draft in that priority, but I'm going to say I think wide receiver needs to be in our first 2 rounds. This is a deep wide receiver draft, so we're in a good place here. We've got a pick at 20 and a pick at, 42, 48, something like that. We've got a chance to get a receiver in the first 2 rounds that's high quality. I would go first round here with a wide receiver. There are several guys that could be available in that position. Talking about Garrett Wilson, he might probably going to go earlier, but Jameson Williams, Chris Olave, Johan Dotson, Treylon Burks, John Mechie. I've seen Christian Watson, not as big on him. I've seen Sky Moore, I'm not as big on him. There's several guys, George Pickens. There's a lot of guys in those first 2 rounds, but if you're going first round, you're looking at one of those top 6 receivers. There's going to be a run on receivers from pick like 15 to 23. A lot of teams in there need wide receivers. And I think if we can at least draft a really good one here and have the 3 guys we know from our system, the rookie and then Deontay and Claypool, and then have Anthony Miller kind of coming in there as a veteran fourth, I think I'd feel much more comfortable, especially if we're going to sign one as well in free agency. But I'd be looking at a high priority first round wide receiver here, and then possibly even another small school fast wide out in the 5th or 6th round, 6th or 7th round, because Pittsburgh always does that. Pittsburgh always they like their small school speedy projects, They've always kind of reached for receivers, and they've chosen small schools a lot. So I wouldn't be surprised if we get like a Baylor kind of a guy in the 6th round or something like that. But I definitely would go first round in receiver. Offensive line is very interesting because that was our biggest priority coming out of this season, and we did a lot to help ourselves in free agency. We signed guard James Daniels, who was one of the top offensive linemen in free agency. We signed Cole Mason from the Vikings, who has a lot of experience. So we brought in 2 guys who can play different positions. Daniels can play guard and center. Cole Mason can play guard and center. It's likely that Daniels is going to stick to guard, Mason's going to stick to center. The spot that I really would be looking at signing somebody, like whether it's a Penning or a Linderbaum, would be in that tackle to center position. Offensive tackle was our weakest spot, in my opinion, because we don't know what's going to happen. We're still developing our 2nd round rookie from last year, and we have Chukso Okorafor, who I'm not big on. We let Zach Banner go, which was the right move. We haven't re-signed the signing from the Chargers last year. He's been gone. So, to me, offensive tackle was one of our biggest spots of need. They kind of showed that they are not looking to draft an offensive tackle super early. They by re-signing Chukso Okorafor to a 3-year, $30 million deal, they made their plan clear. What they've done on this offensive line is show their pat with who they have and who they don't want to use. So when I say that, I mean Chukso Okorafor, he was signed to a deal that is backloaded. So it's a 3-year, $30 million deal. I think he's only getting $3 or $4 million of that this year. It's a very small contract, so that if he doesn't play well this year, in spite of the contract, he's going to be the first cap casualty of 2023. So if he doesn't play well, earning his $3 or $4 million this year, they're not going to keep him on for the next 2 years to earn $12 million a year. It's not going to happen. So if he doesn't play well this year, I think he's gone in spite of the contract. But I don't like the amount of money they re-signed him for. They could have signed a top 3 offensive tackle for that kind of money and front-loaded the contract. So they could have spent 7 more this year and the same total amount of money on a top 3 offensive tackle. So I don't like the re-signing of Chukso Okorafor, but by them doing that, they're saying that he is their guy this year on his prove-it deal. I don't see them benching him after that contract, even though it's backloaded. Also, in signing James Daniels, it sounds to me as if they're moving on from Kendra Green. They signed Mason Cole as well. So Mason Cole playing center. Hassenauer played center for Kendra Green last year. Mason Cole's there now, who's kind of a rotational veteran swing guy. But Mason Cole playing guard and center both those spots are Kendra Green places. Kendra Green has been talked about going to guard, and now they signed James Daniels on top of already having Kevin Dotson. So now you've got your two guards. Daniels is going to start next year, and Dotson, barring the fact of like injury or like coming in out of shape like he did last year, he's going to start. So I think they're testing both Green and Dotson to see how dedicated they are in making that switch and coming into camp ready. But I think Kevin Dotson is definitely going to start on one side and Daniel starts on the other. And that would leave just center for Kendra Green. And he's already shown he can't do that. Now they have Hassenauer and Mason Cole. So I think Kendra Green might be a casualty here by the end of this season. Unless they can move him to tackle and try him at tackle. But I would look at offensive tackle as being one of our bigger needs. I think guard is fine now. I think center is okay. But we don't have a clear number one center either. So I'm going to look at tackle and center as being our number 2 and number 3 respective needs on offense. So like I said, receiver by far is number 1. I think tackle is a number 2 need on offense, and center is a number 3 need on offense. Because while we have Hassenauer and Cole who are decent veteran spot starters, we don't. If there's a guy like Tyler Linderbaum in the draft that falls to us at 20, how can you resist signing the best center in the draft? If you get a top-level guy that's better than Cole and Hassenauer, that's a major upgrade. I trust those two guys we have in there now to play, but if we can get a main guy, we're better off. Same thing at tackle. They're going to try other guys. We've got Okorafor, who I'm not a fan of. If they can get a top-level offensive tackle like a Trevor Penning or, God forbid, a guy like Neal from Alabama would fall to us, which he won't, but he's a top 5 pick. But if someone like that were to fall to us, how do you resist taking a top 3 tackle in this draft? And I know, again, if you're benching Okorafor, he's only making $3 or $4 million this year. You can cut him next season. So there are positions to upgrade here. So I would look at tackle/center as a top 3 round need for us. I'm going to say wide receiver in the first pick. I'm going to say tackle and center. Look at rounds 3 and 4. There's something else you got to do in 2, and there's a lot of depth stuff on the back end I want to do. But I would say if you're drafting for offense this year, wide receiver is your first round, and then your 3rd and 4th round, you can look at that center and tackle position. They're going to draft at least one more lineman. Signing those 2 guys and re-signing Chooks isn't enough for us. We still need 1 or 2 more guys in camp to play with us. They're going to at least sign 1 more offensive lineman. And I would be looking at signing 2 if you can. So that's my priority. Those are my thoughts on the current roster and where we should draft on offense. I'm looking offensive line and wide receiver. Tight end, obviously, we're fine as well. I skipped tight end. We're fine with tight end. So tell me in the comments below, what do you guys think offensively are our biggest needs? We need a wide receiver, obviously. That's clear. Where are we going to draft one? And also, who would you draft at wide receiver if you're going to draft one? There's a bunch this year. Tackle and center. Should we go for one super early and take one of the elite guys? Should we try and add another 3rd or 4th round body to push some of those bridge guys for starting spots? What do you think? Please like, share, and subscribe to this video. If you like my Steeler coverage, I got plenty of back coverage I talked about earlier on the channel. I'm doing the defensive side of the ball next week, so don't come and say, oh, Pittsburgh needs this or that on defense. I'm doing that next week. Tell me in the comments below what you think about the offensive side this week, and I will see you guys soon. Looking forward to the draft. Go Steelers.